What I particularly love about Thomas Kinsella's poetry is its prosody and its unapologetic learnedness. And I think this learnedness, the sense that all of his poems relate to other poems, does not make the poems literary. On the contrary, it gives them a deeper purchase on the experiences about which he writes. Two of the poets that I think are most powerfully in his imagination are Auden and Pound, and I know of no other English language poet who combines them with such variety and grace. And if the poem I've chosen tonight is neither Poundian nor Audenesque, it does belie one of Auden's notions that poetry makes nothing happen, because Butcher's does and did make various things happen. The one thing that particularly made happen is that Thomas Kinsella lost his English readership. And he lost, I think, a number of English friends as well, because of the vehemence with which the poem was conceived. When I read it, I thought of Shelley's I Met Murder on the Way. He had the Mask of Castlereagh. I thought of Swift and his anger and so on. And I thought of Edgell Rickwood's wonderful poem on the Spanish Civil War, but I was reminded by Thomas himself that the poem is deeply Irish. It partakes of the Etheling tradition of, as you all know, of the poet going to a place where something has happened and being spoken to by the voices of the people to whom it has happened. So Butcher's Dozen, a lesson for the octave of Widgery. I'm going to do violence to the poem, and I apologize for that. I'm going to read the beginning, part of the middle, and the end. It's quite a long poem. I went with anger at my heel through bogside of the bitter zeal. Jesus' pity, on a day of cold and drizzle and decay. A month had passed, yet there remained a murder smell that stung and stained on flats and alleys over all. It hung on battered roof and wall, on wreck and rubbish scattered thick, on sullen steps and pitted brick. And when I came where 13 died, it shriveled up my heart. I sighed and looked about that brutal place of rage and terror and disgrace. Then my moistened lips grew dry. I had heard an answering sigh. There, in a ghostly pool of blood, a crumpled phantom hugged the mud. Once there lived a hooligan. A pig came up, and away he ran. Here lies one in blood and bones who lost his life for throwing stones. And so the various voices come alive until we reach a point in the poem where a voice speaks and another voice, which has already spoken, the most political voice in the poem, comes back into the poem. It seemed the moment to explain that sympathetic politicians say our violent traditions, backward looks and bitterness keep us in this dire distress. We must forget and look ahead, nurse the living, not the dead. My words died out. A phantom said, here lies one who breathed his last, firmly reminded of the past. A trooper did it on one knee in tones of brute authority. That harsher spirit, who before had flushed with anger, spoke once more. Simple lessons cut most deep. This lesson in our hearts we keep. Persuasion, protest, arguments, the milder forms of violence, earn nothing but polite neglect. England, the way to your respect is via murderous force, it seems. You push us to your own extremes. You condescend to hear us speak only when we slap your cheek. And yet we lack the last technique. We rap for order with a gun. The issues simplify to one. When your democracy insists you mustn't talk with terrorists. White and yellow, black and blue, have learnt their history from you. Divide and ruin, muddle through, not principled, not but politic. In strength, perfidious, weak, a trick to make good men a trifle sick. We speak in wounds. Behold this mess of curse, my curse upon your politesse. The 13th corpse beside him said, smiling in its bloody head, and though there's reason for alarm in dourness and a lack of charm, their cursed plight calls out for patience. They, even they, with other nations, have a place, if we can find it. Love our changeling, Guard and minded, doomed from birth, accursed heir, theirs is the hardest lot to bear, yet not impossible, I swear, if England would but clear the air and brood at home on her disgrace, everything to its own place, face their walls of dole and fear, and be of reasonable cheer. Good men every day inherit father's foulness with the spirit, purge the filth and do not stir it, let them out, at least let in a breath or two of oxygen, so they may settle down for good and mix themselves in the common blood. We are what we are, and that is mongrel pure. What nation's not, where any stranger hung his hat and seized a lover where she sat? He ceased and faded. Zephyr blew, and all the others faded too. I stood like a ghost. My fingers strayed along the fatal barricade. The gentle rainfall drifting down over Columcille's town could not refresh, only distill in silent grief from hill to hill.